Being 7 o'clock, I'll entertain a motion to open.
Motion. Second.
This is a meeting of the Acushnet Finance Committee, Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. The first order of business we have this evening is the fiscal year 2020 budget discussions. And with that being said, I think we will go over to our financial director.
I'm pleased to say she's back from training.
Back from
Thank God,
training.
because
Yep.
last week with you was just...
I know, it was terrible.
Brian had a dual role last week.
We didn't do a good
Tough
job.
time.
I still didn't get to watch it yet, so I haven't seen it. So I gave you all a new printout of the revenue budget estimates. I know last week Brian had a different number at the top. This is slightly different because we had a few changes in the operating budget that I was able to make. Just to go over a few of them quickly with you. I gave one big printout to Bob with the whole budget. I don't know if you want to make copies for everyone, but I don't know if we're making changes tonight too, so I could also give you a new printout once we make changes if there are any. But just so you have a quick idea of some of the changes we were able to make to cut that number down. In the treasurer collector's office, we had a senior employee leave, and we're currently filling it. It's a union position, so the new person would be coming in at the lower step. That was about $11,000 that we were able to save from that budget. We had an update to the Old Colony assessment from what we had originally budgeted. That was about $128,000. There are less students that are enrolled for this year, so we were able to get a little bit of relief on that end. We made a slight adjustment for the veterans budget. He came in with a $250,000 assessment for the veterans benefits. We cut it by $15,000 just to be closer to actual. He's closer to like 225, 230 this year, so it'll give him a little bit of wiggle room, but not as much as I think he initially had planned for. I made adjustments based on the wage and classification that was approved by the Board of Selectmen last night.
And what was the impact on that?
Well, originally I had it planned for about 30, but when I actually plugged it in, some of the department heads had already put in increases. So the 30 that I had originally estimated was based off of their current FY19 salaries. So I think it's closer to around 20. I was just saying that to Brian. I'll give you an actual number when I get it, but I just plugged it all in and highlighted it before this meeting. So
20 increase?
yeah, yeah,
Over 22 people.
yeah.
I'm sorry, veterans was a drop in what?
15,000.
Okay.
Yep. And then Brian got some new numbers in for our insurances. So workers' compensation, we were able to cut it by $75,000, which was a huge benefit. And I know Brian did a lot of work with Maya to get ourselves covered and covered accurately. So this is a reflection of that. Same thing for the liability insurance. We were able to cut that about $36,000. And then, the other update that I had was an increase. We're still working through police and fire EMS contracts. Bless you. So we plugged in about a $200,000 placeholder increase. Again, I'm sure you remember this from all the budgets. FY19 for those budgets was a 0% increase. And so we didn't want to get too far away by keeping them level funded again for 20. So Brian and I talked and like that, we figured 200,000 between the two of them would be a good conservative approach. But that was the adjustment that we plugged in here. So when you're looking at that negative 765,593, that is encompassing all of those adjustments. Some that were credits and some that were debits, like the 200,000 for the police and fire. So it ends up being 765,593 is where we're starting from at this point.
I'm sorry. So, go ahead. Once the contracts are ratified, that's what that 200K is representing?
Yeah, so obviously, once we find out what the, when the contract is adopted, we'll have an actual estimate of what they really will be, but we figured 200,000 was a good enough number, because like that, at this time, we don't have a definite, these are the rates, these are the increases, or what have you, for
So
steps.
we're reserving a number.
Yeah.
Okay, now, the problem is, what's that number based on?
When did the
Worst
contract
case scenario.
Yeah.
terminate?
July 1st was the termination of the police contract
This
last
past?
year, and the fire contract expires this July 1.
So would that 200,000, would that encompass retroactive, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Just for FY20.
Right. So we're just,
Right,
and I'll be honest with you, you're gonna ask me how did I come up with that number?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I gotta come up
Best
with
estimate,
something. I
yeah.
gotta put something there to make sure we have it when we need it.
Right.
It might be higher, and like that, it's our best estimate, that it could be a higher number, so when we're in FY20, once it's settled, we might be coming to you saying, hey, we're $20,000 short, or what have you, but
Right, make the
we wanted
adjustment
to at
then.
least put something in, so
Sure.
that we're not in, right now, we're almost through FY19, and we don't have any number for FY19, we're waiting on a retro number at this point, whenever it gets resolved, and that number could be anything, really.
Oh.
So
Where
we
does
don't
that
want
come from? Where does that come
the
from?
FY19, is that an article?
It's an article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It'd have to be an article because it's adjusting a prior year budget.
So we just didn't want to set ourselves up for next year to be in kind of the same situation we are this year, and at least have something planned to cover the increase.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
The overlay surplus is down 50,000.
The overlay surplus.
Huh?
Are you looking at this page?
Oh, this page here.
There, I don't have an overlay surplus plugged in. Oh, you're saying for, okay, the allowance for abatements. Yep, so that's the, I get those numbers from the assessor's office. I get the estimated overlay, and I also get the new growth number from them, so.
Yeah, the new growth, that question was down too. I
Yeah.
thought that the assumption that there was a lot more building going on, which would drive the new growth figure up.
So I know, the approach is always to be conservative, because you don't want to overestimate new growth.
Correct.
Or underestimate the abatements. So, I can't really speak for the assessor. She could probably give you a better idea of why she chose these numbers, but I know she looks at the information that she has and then tries to be conservative to leave a little bit of wiggle room.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were wrong?
Yeah.
That it was
Well, I'm always hoping, I'm
Yeah.
an optimist.
Well, bad part of it's only 60 grand, so
Well,
it's not gonna help me.
well, between the two would be more than that.
Right.
right? Between the overlay surplus and new growth.
Yeah, but the surplus is in the revenue that's gonna go into your capital budget.
Okay.
Any other questions so far? Now we have some additional areas that we need to cover to try to balance the budget. We've had some discussions this past week with financial experts here, and these are some of the areas that the committee needs to consider and to make recommendations on. And we'll just take them one at a time. The first one, question I posed to the financial team would be the possibility of adjusting the vehicle excise tax revenue. In the past, we've always come in a little low, so we've had a little extra money in free cash for the following year.
Right, we had presented in a previous meeting where we'd been with excise tax, and we'd always been estimating the revenue at $1 million, and it's been much higher. And we got an eyebrow raised by the DOR rep that we were deliberately underestimating. And so the idea would be not to bring it up to the actual, but bring it up the estimate so that we wouldn't be caught short, nor would we be underestimating so dramatically. So the recommendation that we have here is to move that up by 200,000.
We're going to bring it up to 12. Then.
12. Yeah.
That's one of the areas.
We get up to
1
million.
1.2.
1.2, okay. I'm like, 12 million, Bob, you just solved it all.
Well,
Right.
Okay.
wishful thinking. The other consideration would be in the conservation's budget of the pollinator assistant. I know it's been a couple of years that she's requested that, but I don't think this is the year that we can fund that. That would be an additional $5,000. Another area would be the removal of the additional equipment for the Conservation Committee, because they have the same article in the capital budget of $2,000.
What was that one for again? 200,000?
We had the plotter in both.
2,000.
Oh, 2,000.
Yeah.
Had $2,000 in their budget and $2,000 in the capital budget. It's double counted.
Then in the, we're going to have a capital expenditure for the highway department, so we could possibly reduce their operating budget. $10,000 in engineering fees, $5,000 in police details, and $80,000 in the road materials.
So we've got an article,
90,
yeah, for 250,000. So rather than put it into his operating budget, you'll put the operating budget back to last year's levels, and then put the money over on the capital side. And that takes it out of the operational side.
Right. And that gives them some flexibility as well for carrying over if they don't spend it all.
Is that would that be a permanent thing that we do?
It's a refillable thing you could do. So, in other words, next year, you could decide that you had, let's say, of the 250, he spent 100,000. I'm just speculating, I'm not saying he will or won't. And then you say, okay, well, we'll give you back the 100,000, so you'll always have the 250. Or you could say, okay, so we'll up it to 300, whatever you decide at that time. The advantage is that it's not in the operating budget, so it doesn't just automatically roll to free cash. Capital budget, and it's an article, so it can span year to year to year. So if he gets a bad year and he can't do a lot of pavement, the money doesn't disappear on him.
The other item would be the reduce the CMAS curbside pickup by $75,000. Dan Bernard has not confident, but thinks he can probably reduce that number.
Yeah, we're in, we're gonna be, hopefully this week, in a position to sign a new deal on our recycling. So this number that he put into the budget originally was worst-case scenario, and now we've got a better deal than worst-case scenario. It's still not a great deal, it's just a good deal. So that means we can bring that number back down about 75,000. By the way, you know, let's give credit where credit is due. That's all Dan. Dan and Kathy have beat that one to death to bring that number down.
Right.
So,
What about the large item pickups?
large item pickup is still in the budget. It's in the operating budget at 20,000. Because the idea was that the selectmen had wanted to do that every year.
Sure, but I mean, would
It's
that
20
be
grand.
something
It's 20 grand, yeah.
It's 20 grand.
Yeah,
to
just
think
like
about?
easy.
Yep.
I mean, as painful as it would be,
Well, part of the problem is Dan, and we should have Dan in to discuss this. And I certainly don't want to, you know, countermand the Board of Selectmen, so this is going to have to be a joint decision. But Dan's concern is when you do, we have the capacity to take the larger items that we're talking about picking up curbside, but at the DPW garage. So we have a mechanism to get rid of it. His concern is when we do the large item pickup here, we get everybody's, not just our resident. You know, so-and-so's brother-in-law comes over and dumps something on the curb, and we're paying for that. So he's not a big fan of the curbside large item pickup.
How about, I mean, how about if they allowed, instead of picking it up, how if they allowed residents to bring what they have as a large item down to the recycling center on their own?
Well, we have that now.
We have that now, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only difference
Problem
is
is
who's
people don't
picking
have
it up.
trucks to do it.
Fee
Yeah.
for it, too.
Yeah, you pay a fee, but, you know, if we're trying to cut out 20 grand out of the budget,
Yeah.
that's where you go. And the question I really have is, you know, if you don't do it every year, I mean, or you say this year we can't afford it, that's a possibility. Right now, it's not part of the necessity that we have to do that quite yet. And I hate like hell to oppose the Board of Selectmen after they asked Dan to put it into the budget. So,
no, but just looking at the way things are.
hmm,
But also, since
I know that, close that article.
they have a mechanism by which a fee is paid and is brought up, so therefore we're not, supposedly not losing money, so to speak, where it's curbside, everybody, you know, and it's everybody's game, and and no fees are involved. So there's no revenue coming in to offset it, so.
Like you said, other people can come and dump stuff on the
Right,
curb.
and they do.
Of course they do, it's human nature.
So one of the things I sort of look at is, the first year I was here, we didn't do large item pickup until very late in the year. And we were finding couches thrown out on the side of the road and.
Well, illegal dumping is.
Correct, everywhere.
Yeah.
And so when we did the large item pickup, that seemed to disappear, but when we opened the transfer station to large item drop-off and pay to throw it, so to speak, the problem did seem to abate. So I'm not sure people drive over from Wareham to dump their couch in Acushnet. They might just sort of stay local, but we're not finding the problem now that we have a safety valve that we did when I first got here. We're not finding large items cast aside on the road.
I guess, maybe I didn't pay attention, but how does the large item pickup work? Like, they just go around town on that day in every neighborhood? So in New
Yes.
Bedford, you call and they come and pick it up?
In my town, for example, you get 2 large items a year.
Okay.
So 2
Not
mattresses,
unlimited.
2
Yeah, yeah.
chairs, a chair and a mattress or something,
Right.
but you only get 2 a year. And you have to call, make an appointment, and then have it out on the curb the day they say they're gonna come and pick it up.
Could we do something like that? And if you don't have a truck to deliver it, here, we'll pick it up, but here's the fee
Let
to
me
pick
talk
it
to
up.
Dan to see what we can do, but then I would still need that line item of 20 grand.
No, but
Yeah.
then maybe there's a fee or something like that.
Right.
You
To
know.
offset it?
So, to offset it, so at
Right.
least for those
So we
people
could
who
do sort
don't
of a
have.
modified large
Yeah,
item
so-
pickup, okay.
Yeah, so for those individuals who don't have the truck to drop it off, or don't have the ability to get it in a truck or
Right.
something like that, we at least clean up
So let me check with Dan and see what we can do.
We did that here in town several years ago, where the town would send a truck and a backhoe or a loader if you had a real large item, and certain date, certain time, they'd pick it up and use their truck to transport it.
Okay.
I can see that being costly though.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's find out.
DPW equipment and men and,
Well, I mean, our guys are expensive, but Julie just points out to me, we still have $7,600 left in the original article for large item pickup, so we could at least reduce that 20,000 by that amount of money. So that's a minimum. So let's look at that next week. And I'll bring it up with Dan and see if I can come up with a better plan.
Do we have, ask this question, Dan, when we have, folks bring it up to the station, is there revenue if there's, of course, the cost of metal has gone down, but there's revenue, if we sell it out?
Paper, zero. Glass, you can't give it away for Lovener money. And the metal has to be separated so dramatically now that it's not cost effective at the moment. Doesn't mean it won't always be, but the idea that I've seen people say, well, I'm saving my metal until the price of metal goes up. It's been 7 years since the price of metal has been worthwhile.
I remember when the metal was worth money on curbside pickup.
Sure.
It would all disappear before the...
Yes, you're absolutely correct. But no, we're not really getting much for our,
Okay.
in fact, we're still paying
Thank
to
you.
get rid of stuff.
Thank you.
So,
Another item that we should consider is reducing the streetlight energy expense, $25,000.
how's that?
well, we're funding streetlights at 60 grand, and that was before we went to all LED. And the LED budget's coming in pretty reasonable, and we want to leave a little room to replace fixtures or maybe even add fixtures if we need to. So consequently, I think it's a fair observation to say, where's my savings if you don't give me my savings? So I think we can safely take that budget down to 25 grand.
Any other questions on that?
What did you say, John?
Where's my tax dollar going?
Ah. Fools.
Don't say that publicly.
It's John's money.
The technology and training budget, $5,000.
Yeah, we originally put that in at 10 grand. And as you know, we adopted all those wages and all those policies for implementation in 1 year. And so the idea was to train people on it and not to open dangerous emails, that kind of thing. But we're gonna have to do it for less. So.
Next one would be the Acushnet school budget, reduction of $54,208.
Bob recommended this. Listen, I thought the schools did a very good job making their case, and I'm not denigrating it. But we've now just taken out how much from the town side, and we're endangering even large item pickup, etc. So unfortunately, as much as I believe in what the schools told me, we don't have it. So instead of a 2.5, which is what we originally had thought we could offer the schools, and they came in with a story at 3.56, what I'm suggesting here is sort of meet them more than halfway and come up to 2.5 plus 100,000. So we certainly recognize their issues, but in fairness, I don't have it. So we'll do the best we can, and if some money comes up somewhere in the budget in the future and we can do something for them, we certainly will. But right now, I need to balance the budget, and I see an awful lot of pain coming out of our side of town
Everybody
government.
else's.
And I'm not saying they have to take even all of it on theirs. So,
And realistically, the town, through the highway department, and there's been a lot of services from the town side shifted over to the school side, which is snow plowing being one, highway department has done an awful lot of work there, so, you know.
I want to be very careful. It's been a darn good relationship with the school, and it's been a
Absolutely.
two-way street. We've split the IT department, Dan's been over there, the fire department's been over there to help Dan put the new chimney
Right.
on, which was a
Watch part of it.
great effort of all departments together.
Which is the way the town should be operating.
Correct.
you know.
And when I sit down with the superintendent and the business manager and Julie and I, we have a very candid exchange of where we are, what their problems are, what our problems are. And I don't get an attitude, I get cooperation. And I'm hoping that we are doing the same thing with Kristen. But I only have so much. And one of the concerns I have is if you look at our 2.5 increase and then look at the request, we're really doing pretty well. And in addition, the last 2 years, we've opened the capital budget so they can keep up with the maintenance issues that they have and not defer maintenance. And so I think we're making a very big commitment there. I know I'm asking them for some pain. I really do know that we're asking for some pain. But I'm afraid we have to.
Well, everybody's
Everybody's gonna share
Everybody's
some
feeling
pain,
it.
so.
I would like on that figure, we're meeting with the school committee, the superintendent next week.
We haven't set that up yet,
Okay,
John.
no, I was just wondering, they set certain
fair.
objectives in their budget, what they wanted to see accomplished for this year, whether that minor reduction would in turn impair that, what they were going to accomplish, or whether they can look within their budget, some reorganizations type of items, and come up with a figure where they in turn can meet the objectives that they talked about. There's certain, the gorilla in the room, has been the MCAS scores, and we have great concerns about that. And with, just even, I like to see, even though it's a minor cut, but on the other hand, I like to see that they can't feel comfortable in going ahead with their objectives and not you. In other words, it's very easy to say, well, we didn't get the money, we can't improve MCAS scores, and we don't want to fall into that trap. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, if you give a figure, and whether they go back and they look at your your budget and say we can accomplish what we want to set out in fiscal 20 and with this cut. I'd like to have that type of dialogue rather than the unilateral cut.
I didn't make this request without talking to Kristen and the superintendent first, so
Okay.
I didn't want them to be, this would be their first
Yeah,
notification.
but I think it'd be a role
Today
for
I
the
met
committee
with
to-
them and explained where my problems were. They explained where their problems are. They're not pretty. There's going to be some pain here. And we're gonna help them the best we can to get through it, but it's not gonna be easy. Is that a fair summation?
That is fair.
Okay.
That is very fair.
And I have to be honest with you, it's been very candid exchange of where we were, how much we have, and one of the things I would tell you in the past is, yeah, I got a little buffer here, yeah, I got a little buffer there. I had no buffer.
Buffers
This is
are
it.
gone.
Okay? Where we need to straighten up the numbers, we will. But even when we get done with these cuts that we're talking about here, with one more coming behind this one, we're still not balanced.
That's right.
But I think I think we all, as finance committee members, need to be getting more knowledgeable with the school budget, in the sense of asking questions, have an opportunity to ask questions, and what roles each play, and how the money is, where it's spent, and so forth. So, I think it's rather than just saying, oh, we got a figure, we got 50,000, wherever it is, and let's call it a day. I don't think that's a really healthy type of growth on our part. So we really want to really look at I think some members have asked certain questions. And I think they need to have answers. So that's what I'm saying.
And I think we do need, additional dialogue with the school department, with the superintendent and the committee
Right.
and
I
yourself.
believe that we are coming back next Wednesday, and
Okay.
we will be prepared to discuss what what that $54,000 means to the school department budget. So we're working on that right now. We've been discussing it with Mr. Noble and with Ms. Hebert and myself and the superintendent, and we are prepared. We are, like we said, we are prepared to come forward and let you know of some additional costs that we do have. So, and I do understand that there is that potential for the $50,000 cut, but we can certainly come prepared, Mr. Howcroft, to let you know what that means. But not, we can continue to move forward with our objectives, which is certainly what our goal is to do, is to move forward to try to continue to improve. Whether that means, what that means within the budget, that's for us to work out
Correct.
over the next week.
And I'm assuming that part of the discussion is kind of reviewing roles and duties and that sort of thing, right? Just making sure that we're being efficient and wise about
Correct.
about everything. So that would be helpful for me next week.
Is that the plan of the school department?
I'm sorry?
Is that the plan of the school department right now?
Yes, because I do believe that we were prepared to come next week to talk about it, and we'll be letting you know about the additional tuitions that we've had since our meeting, and also how we're going to get to within a number that we can all, live with, and what that would mean. And we said that may mean, discussing some more efficiencies.
There's also another factor which we've discussed before, is if we have a decline in the number of students going to Old Colony, in turn that has an impact on the school department budget as far as tuition. We may have the savings in the Old Colony budget, but so to speak, but on the other hand, it's increased in tuition. That cost should be taken out or combined with education altogether. You know what I'm saying? Rather than segregating it out. Because one will go up and the other will go down, and we're playing this. And you say, oh, your budget's increased, yeah. But on the other side of the educational budget, it's decreased, if you know what I'm saying. So I think that should be segregated out in our deliberations. And then take a look at, see where they can, I don't want to use terms, buzzwords like reorg or any of those. That's up to the experts in front of me to deal with. And so we'll anxiously wait for next week. So,
No, that is a good point, Mr. Howcroft. I will say, I wish I could tell you that because our tuitions to, say, Fairhaven and New Bedford have increased, that yours to Old Colony are decreasing. Quite a few of our increases have been from new move-ins to the town of Acushnet that are in high school. So we've had, for example, and we'll go into more detail next week certainly, but since we pay the tuition bill in 3 times to Fairhaven in November, March, and June. From November to March to that invoice, 7 students were added to Fairhaven High that moved in or transferred from another. So that's 7 times annual tuition, $10,000. Fortunately, 4 moved out, but it's still a net of 3. So some of the move-ins, you wouldn't necessarily see relief on the Old Colony side, right? I mean, it's nice when it works that way, but.
And I don't think it's a complete wash, because a vocational school costs more than, I think, per student. A vocational school costs more per head than
right, it's about
the public
2,000,
schools.
some odd. You're right.
So there is that.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier too. The school, when they have students come in or out, they face that the financial burden immediately. Whereas for Old Colony, we get assessed based on a number of students in October from the year before. So if more students, move in from Acushnet and go there, we won't realize that number for a whole year. But the school will have to pay for it immediately
Correct,
when
and so
something like that happens.
those are all factors that we get into we should look always at the details, which in turn can affect, a decision-making process. I just want to toss that out. So,
I'm just curious, the tuition, the $10,000 per student, is that Does the town have to pay that full regardless? Like if a student transfers into town mid-year?
No, so we do an enrollment capture. So as of whoever is on the rolls, as of, for example, October 1st, will get charged for. But now there may be more students in February, March, so we would get charged for those students. So it is not a per diem per se, but it's not like if somebody moves in September, or somebody's on the books in September, but then they're out by January, they won't be on our February and June bills. So
Right.
we wouldn't pay for them the
So
entire
if a student
year.
moves in April,
Right.
and you only have a month or two of the school year, you still...
So it would be that final installment that we would be paying.
Okay.
So you pay 1/3 even if the student shows up on the last day of school?
No, because they would do that, they'd capture the enrollment even before that, so
Okay.
the last day is,
Okay, so
right.
maybe the last month.
So like I said, it's not a per
It's not a
diem
perfect match.
adjustment,
Right.
but it is, based on, we're not paying the full year for somebody who moves out in December.
Right, that's what I was asking, thank you.
Right.
But it works both ways.
It
They may have
does.
just missed the cap, and so they might be here 6 months, but you pay for 3 months, or a third as opposed to 2/3.
Right.
That's been a very carefully monitored situation. I don't think before you came in that it was carefully monitored, but it is carefully monitored now as far as when people come in and leave, what sometimes anecdotally, people would show up in September and never heard from them, we'd pay the whole bill, but that has not, that has been a very carefully monitored, I can
Right.
assure you that.
So for example, when we get the enrollment from one of the high schools, the registrar works in the office next to me, so I'll give her the enrollment list and she'll make sure that she has registration information for all those students. Clearly, if they were students last year, we knew they were 4th to 8th graders. We know that they've proven residency, but we'll look for any new students. And in fact, there's several that we are going back and forth with both high schools right now because we don't have all the paperwork that we need. And they are not supposed to enroll Acushnet students until they've checked with us. But sometimes things fall through the cracks, and that's why internally, I work closely with the registrar to make sure, because it is $10,000 a student, and we want to make sure they're Acushnet residents. And in fact, last year or the year before, through the efforts of our residency officer, we were able to remove some students at the high school that had not proven residency in Acushnet or had falsified residency in Acushnet. So we were able, like you said, it works both ways. So it's definitely a concerted effort.
So I'm sure next week we'll have some additional conversation and dialogue with the school department. So whatever questions, we got a week to think of the questions and the avenues that we're going to have to pursue to
So
balance this budget.
based on what we've just done, we're now at,
Between, I think was there one?
The reduction in health insurance.
we are going to bring health insurance in less than this year. We have a decrease. And we're restructuring how our plans are offered. So there will be a savings of at least 3% in that budget line. However, because our plan is changing, the enrollment may change. It could go up or down. It certainly will shift because we're going to be creating some advantages to the +1, theoretically, and this is going to be voted tomorrow by the IEC, so I'll have to sort of wait till next week to give you the full details. But it could mean some significant shifts and maybe some people coming onto the plan that we hadn't counted on, the law of unintended consequences. So I'm recommending safely we could take that budget down by about $27,750. So that's an easy, low-hanging fruit kind of thing. So that brings us down to, and the answer is?
Well, we also plugged in 200,000 for the use of free cash to balance the budget. I know last year we had cut it down to 230,000. So just trying to plug in a number for us to as a goal number. I mean, we know we're gonna have, like Brian said earlier, we know we're gonna have to use free cash still to balance the budget. We're trying to be optimistic and put it at 200. That would leave our deficit at 76,635 to balance the budget in full.
76,635.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
I
there's
missed a
one,
couple $100 somewhere.
Pardon me?
I missed a couple $100. My number's a couple $100 off.
Mr. Chairman, on your laundry list, you failed to mention the cost, administrative costs and what increase we want to be facing this year, and whether we want to look at that as part of a deliberation.
The administrative costs, which departments?
All, the total department, all departments.
School department and...
No, we'll discuss that with it, you know, that's a, you know, but I'm talking about all departments, whether, you know, whether we should establish it in order to make the deficit up, you know, what the, what increases in administrative costs as far as salaries. Whether what figure are we facing an increase? Whether we want to move ahead with that.
I mean, the wage classification?
Yes, that part of it, some of it is, some of it isn't. Some of them just been tossed in. We've had previous discussions on that. But just get a comprehensive look at that and see whether we want to move ahead with that.
Well, we're going to have the wage and classification breakdown,
Right.
correct?
We estimated the number about,
Between 20 and 30, I'd say.
right, and then I think it's closer to 20. She's a little more conservative than I am, about 20 grand.
Oh, I thought it was...
Over 22 people?
No, I'm, okay.
But that's
Thank
already
you,
reflected.
thank you for...
Yes.
Yeah,
that's-
that impact is already reflected in the sheet we got today.
Okay, I stand corrected. You know,
One-
I was
one-
fishing for big money.
Is there-
Unfortunately, now we're into the little money,
Yeah.
You're right, exactly,
And-
and
you know.
I appreciate it.
Does the budget include any additional part-time or full-time employees? One.
That was the $12,000 in the senior center. And I'm really reluctant to touch it, because one of the things that happens now, because of the staffing in the senior center, is Heather is alone quite a few hours. And I don't think that's a good thing.
Safety.
The safety issue, it's, you know, it's a security issue, you know, it's a big building to be one person. Now, we are, you know, last year, of course, you remember, we passed an article to put some improvements into that building, and one of the improvements was the surveillance cameras, and they are now installed, and they are working great. So that's a help, but the problem is that I gotta be looking at it to know that there's a problem. You have to monitor it, so, and the best way to describe it will certainly tell me what happened after the fact, but I'd really like to, I just don't think it's a healthy thing to do. I don't think it's $12,000 is what she's got in her request, so I just, that's the last place I wanna touch.
That'd be a tough one to...
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, the technology, that was another one.
Yeah, I apologize, well, okay, in fairness,
Somewhat part.
there is a shift in the technology budget where we've added $5,600 for network tech. That person already works for the schools, and the idea would be to have that person help us a little bit on this side of town government. And so that was in Chris's budget increase, $5,600.
We have
I
a
mean,
lot of work.
I'm not sure if that's an increase in the head count, because it's just basically paying for a service we're taking from the schools.
Yeah,
So,
few hours.
few hours. I'm not,
Yeah.
but I'm looking for, you know, do we create another full-time job? And the direct answer to the question, right now, our head count's down 4,
Yep.
and we're going to put 1 back in the treasurer collector's office, so our head count net is down 3, and I'm hoping to keep it that way.
But that's in the budget already.
Yeah.
That head count is in the budget.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
all right, so we haven't added any full-time employees. Have we taken anyone from part-time to full-time?
No.
Other than adding the hours to that IT.
The IT person, yeah, but it's still part-time.
Still pretty-
Yeah.
Essentially, what we're doing is paying for what we're already stealing.
Right. We have a lot of work from technology.
We're being fair.
Yeah.
Are we going to have any additional free cash for all these articles that are before us?
We're gonna, I'm glad you brought that up, Michael, it's a good question. Free cash is $1.2 million. That was our grand total. We're using $200,000 to balance the budget, so now you're down to $1 million. You have an overlay surplus number we've yet to negotiate with the Board of Assessors, but for the sake of argument, say it's $400,000.
Oh,
Take another.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
400,000. Okay, then if you take the total number of articles that are presented before you, out of the free cash and overlay surplus number, you're at $1,344,000, so we're gonna have to make some changes here too. Some things will not be done this year. So, the nice part about this is, we have a wish list. One of the things I've asked the school department to do is prioritize their requests. We're gonna have to look at the request in my capital budget as well, and determine our priorities. So some things may not happen. And in a weird sense, I wanna balance the operating budget, then we'll tackle the capital budget.
always, in the past, it always was balance Article 1 first and then deal with the other articles. That's
Yep.
been a standard.
Well,
With the past.
that's my paranoia creeping in. I want the operating budget under control, and then I'll do the capital budget.
Well, that's the same,
Yeah.
we agree.
Can I ask a question? The copy machine for 20,000.
Yeah, there's 2 copy machines.
I was just gonna ask how many,
Okay.
because
There's 2. There's one
We
for the
just
police
bought one for the
department and one
office.
for town hall. Right now, there's no copy machine at the Parting Ways building. We make them come across the parking lot. And
Yeah,
they
but
want
they
it.
got new office space.
That's right. They want a new copy machine. They want a copy
and we
machine.
priced this out, like 10,000?
Yes, yes, I have that bid. I'll be delighted to share it with you because it's the same. I'm gonna buy exactly what the police department's buying.
A couple
Or
of years
was
ago,
planning.
ours were 9,000 apiece, so
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, I know what we just paid at the office, it was not 10. That's the part that kills me.
Really? I'll give you a quote.
Okay.
What do you mean, not 10 as in 10 is good or 10 is bad?
No, 10, we did not pay 10.
Not as much. Good, I'll be delighted to swap quotes with you. Happy to do that. There's some other
You
things
bought
that.
it or leased it?
We bought it. We bought
Okay.
that one.
Yeah, I'm delighted to. But the machine I designed, by the way, does everything.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
fax,
that.
copy, scan.
Fax,
Upload
copy,
to
scan,
the
and do
network
the
drive.
Printer.
punches the 3 holes in it, does
Network.
the bind.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we got all the extra bins
Okay,
for
so
all
we'll
that.
definitely
Shreds
swap quotes.
needles.
Remember, I have to buy off the state bid list though.
That's the problem.
Yes,
I don't.
Yes.
We don't have to at the
Yes.
office.
So do we not have any copy machines now in there?
we have no copy
So
machines.
none at all?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of those desktop ones that,
Okay.
your printer gets to be a copy machine too, but it's terribly not economical to do that. You're using if the ink cartridge is a little too fast and cost per copy is a little too high. And do I think that they're doing that because they don't want to walk across the parking lot? Absolutely, I do. So I gotta come up with a fix. But in all sincerity, by the way, if I'm telling the schools they have to prioritize, so do we. So, we have to find the economy somewhere.
Think about the walking as exercise, and we're just
That's part
concerned
of our
about your
wellness
health.
program.
We're concerned about your
Well,
health.
employees are gonna be healthier.
Well, we also,
Insurance rates go down.
we're looking to see, could we, the police department, I definitely think that they make the case for a new machine. I'm not sure I'm beginning to doubt whether I can make the case for mine. As much as I
I think
want.
he voluntarily reduced it by 10,000.
Here's the answer, Susan. I cannot go to the schools and say, I can't give you everything you asked for and take everything I asked for.
No.
So, we're gonna have to figure it out. But you can understand that I'll be extraordinarily unpopular with the people over there.
Tell them the option, they can move back.
Especially in the wintertime.
I've offered to switch offices with the town clerk, she's not interested, so.
They'll all be happy when they drop a size in their clothing.
So, I mean, we're gonna have to look at that, so truthfully, so.
The committee comfortable with these proposed reductions here?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we voted
Yeah,
on.
we'll look at the whole total budget, you know, yeah, we're gonna have that, and
We can take these changes that we've made tonight, and we can reform the budget and give it to you properly next week completely, every department and the summary sheet.
correct.
Yeah.
Let's see if we might be able to come up with the answer on closing the 76,000,
76,635.
next week. I'd like to come in hopefully next week and say, with some pain, here's the solution.
We won't have a definite number from the schools by next week.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, whether we have much latitude. Unless you can find something big I've forgotten here, we could do without. As much as I respect the school situation, I don't know where I would get any more money at this point. Unless John wants to write a check.
Well, I'm basically looking for a good, candid, and transparent discussion with the school department on the budget before any decisions are made. That should be made by the finance committee members.
Yep.
And what does all, what do you have to have it all? Oh,
I'd like to do it by the end of the first week in April. I have to go to publication the second week in April.
So it gives us two more
So
weeks.
they give us
About
2 weeks.
2 more weeks.
Right? That gives us 2 weeks.
Right. And so anything you want to rediscuss, anybody that you want to come in again, other than the schools on their budget, now's the time. I will say the cooperation, when I went up to the department heads and said, I got a problem, the cooperation has been damn good. And some of these suggestions that you got today came out of the departments. And in particular, by the way, the majority of the cuts came out of Dan. So, you know, God bless him for raising his hand and saying, if you give me this, I can give you that.
Right.
So,
Which, a lot of this we didn't have in the past, so it's going to be encouraging that we have this transparency and, you know, cooperation, especially, you know, within and between the departments. I mean, it's.
I have great trust in the school for giving me the straight story, as I hope they trust me for giving them what we've got. But they have a problem, and I'm glad I'm the town administrator, not the business manager of the schools, because she's got a problem.
Yeah, she has to come up with some reductions in the budget.
She can handle it.
But all I can say to you, if you think this year is tough, next year will be tougher.
I think my membership, my term expires by next year.
Cowards die many deaths. Okay.
No, we'll wait till next week.
As long as you're comfortable proceeding forward on the cuts that we're promoting, we'll put them into the budget now. Okay, and then we'll try to come up with some answer on closing the remaining dollar amount. See what happens. In addition, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. The business manager again at the DPW, what's the,
Kathy?
yeah, we're adding that in there? Is that one that washes out in and out? Because that's a new line item this year.
It's a new line because she was a member of the union last year. She's not a member of the union now, so she came out of the clerical and came in as the business manager.
So, okay, that's what it is. That's what I'm
It
missing.
was under clerical last year.
Gotcha, that's, okay. And then did we add somebody in there for, under permanent labor?
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
So permanent labor went from 100,000 to 137.
From the union, yeah, from the contract negotiations.
The contract negotiations took us up 37,000.
But again, remember, at 19 was level funded, so that's taking into account
2 years.
2 years, yeah, of increases.
at 37%. I guess the math seems a little off for me, that's why.
It was a pretty big raise.
I can see that part.
We'll be delighted to break that down for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that was the only one that was on my list then.
I actually have, I got one more question, because that just kind of jogged my memory. To go over the, I think it was the building commissioner, had
Yes.
a $20,000 bump.
18.
That was 18?
Yep.
Now.
I mean, I know it's not much, but I'm pretty sensitive.
So there was a reduction by a full-time employee,
60,000.
Yeah.
so 60,000 employee got reduced. So his duties increased accordingly.
Yes.
So now my question is, now that $18,000 increase is there, next year, is he gonna be looking to add that employee back in any kind of capacity?
Nope. And it's not in the
It's not
budget
gonna
request
happen.
before you, not at all. Nope.
The drop was a
But here's it comes down to, we have to be more efficient with less. And,
Well, that was my concern with
Yeah.
that, is just,
So-
you get that bump, and then, okay, we'll let a year go by, and then 2, 3 years from now, we're gonna add that employee back, and then
well,
it's like,
one can never say never, but the fact of the
Part-time
matter.
capacity or
But,
something.
yeah, I mean, right now, we're getting the work done with the crew we have, and I'm comfortable with the way that the facilities are being managed. Jim is doing double duty. He's doing the building commissioner's job, and he's doing the facilities manager's job. And in addition, and as I said, last week when we're going back and forth, is between green communities and the savings that has brought to the town, and the fees that the building department brings in, we're covered on that salary, completely. In fact, I would say we're covered on that and the administrative assistant in his department. So I cannot complain about the productivity and the efficiency that comes out of that. And the stuff that we're doing in-house with the reforming of parting ways, what we're gonna be doing at the senior center, what we're doing right now in the treasurer collector's office, which I'll be delighted to show you on the way out, because it's great. We're doing all that with in-house labor, so we're not into prevailing wage, I'm not bidding it out, I'm doing it with in-house labor, and we're getting quality work.
are they gonna be doing the work inside the old library as well?
No,
No.
no. That one's a little beyond us, because they're gonna be building 2 additions out the side, and walls, and there's 14 units going into that building.
14? Wow.
Yeah, we're talking about, and they're, not to say they're gonna be palatial, they're small. They're designed for one person. If I lived in that small space with my wife, there'd be a murder, probably me.
And that's gonna be limited to veterans only.
Veterans only. The advantage to the veterans only is there's grant money available for building veterans-only housing. The advantage that it gives to this town and to Mattapoisett, because we're doing it in partnership with Mattapoisett, is that it takes the pressure off the housing authority, so that we'll have a space for an Acushnet senior that needs to move in. Right now, under the way the housing authorities work, a veteran, regardless of residency, gets priority for housing. So if a veteran from Grafton is looking for housing and is willing to move to Acushnet, he goes to the top, he or she goes to the top of the list. That could bump out, a senior here that needs to go into the housing authority. By creating these additional units, takes the pressure off of the residential terrace project, and we'll be able to create more opportunities in town.
Weren't they gonna expand that
There is a plan to expand it, but there's no funding.
funding, no money to expand it?
Nothing so far. That's that's an interesting one. That's, if we wanted to as a town, we're a 50-50 partner in the housing
Right.
authority. So usually what happens there is the state will commit to build a certain number. We have space to expand,
Yeah.
and, but right at the moment, no funding to expand. And one of the things that we really do have a shortage of in Acushnet, if you're a senior and you would like to stay in this town, there's not many options. So,
Mr. Chair, I have one, it's just more of a suggestion than a question. In regards to the building inspector,
mhm.
then, you've explained, detailed the additional duties and the complexities of those duties and so forth. Has a new job description been written?
No, I took-
And changing the title, because I think that leads to a lot of confusion and, and questions. And when you made a comprehensive type of, like, job description and probably change of titles, whatever a title, that it would clear up a lot of,
Confusion.
yes.
What I've done, we've taken two jobs, the facilities manager and the building commissioner, and said, here, you got 'em. Here's the job description for one, here's the job description for the other. I haven't thought about a new title, because I've just, when he's wearing the hat of facilities management, he's calling himself the facilities manager, and when he's wearing the hat as a building commissioner, because they're really not the same job at all. So, and it allows me to divide the job, should we...
Is it divided in the budget?
It's divided where, how's it?
Is it in two
No, it's not.
locations?
It's not
or-
divided in
It's
the
all in
budget.
the-
Okay, that's what I'm saying, it should be, it's not divided in the budget, even though it's divided as far
Correct.
as,
One of the concerns I have, John, when we divide salaries in the budget, how much does so-and-so get paid?
correct, I know that.
Okay, and it drives Mr. Cabral nuts when I divide it between budgets. Because he says, well, then you gotta tell me when we're, what somebody's making as a total. But from your perspective, I see what you're saying, that when I just throw in the building commissioner's salary and I don't put something into the facilities budget for his salary, it looks as though the building commissioner, for the project of this being building commissioner, is getting more pay.
Correct.
And that's a fair point.
So I thought maybe a change in
Yeah.
title would do it.
I don't know, I'd be delighted in
Maybe.
any suggestion you can give me for a title, other than making it a long title.
Commission.
He's building commissioner, facilities commissioner, building
Something
and
like that.
facilities commissioner. But I can tell you this,
Look at the state registry, you can come up with all sorts of
yeah,
interesting titles.
probably. But I heard him finally say today that I'm backed up, I can't handle one more thing. So that was the first time I've heard that. I can only respect him for finally saying, I've reached the end, I can take on no more. So
Okay, thank you.
we're certainly getting our maximum value out of that.
And I worked closely with Jim when we were building the police station, and his experience is invaluable, and he's 100% committed constantly.
You gotta look at what he's accomplished because of his knowledge in the buildings and building trade. The Parting Ways building is a classic example where the insulation is now so thick, and the way he changed the heating system, again, using the Green Communities grant money. Our electric budget, our heating budget is a third of what it was 4 years ago. So, there's a return on that investment.
Very efficient. Any other questions?
We're turning him on now to the schools, and he's got a grant for $250,000 to reduce the electrical usage in the school. So we're gonna be changing one of the two schools, I can't remember which one. We're gonna go through and take all the CFLs out and put in the LEDs. That's gonna save the schools a ton of money. There's gonna be a proposal before town meeting for net solar credit purchases, Jim. And that will give us a savings at a minimum of $50,000 a year. 80% of the electrical use in town is the schools, so that's a $40,000 a year savings in the school budget. So there's $250,000. We're not paying Jim $250,000. And he's already starting to write the second grant so we can do the second school building next year. And I'm pretty comfortable, based upon conversations we've had, we're gonna get it. So if we can get $500,000 over 2 years and invest it in the schools and cut our operating budget forever, $30,000 in electrical use, big win.
Big one.
I think we might have asked this in the past with the schools, with the ability to get some solar panels on the roofs? I think did we ever talk about that?
And yeah, there's a couple of issues with that. One, the school roofs are not, are end of life, so we'd have to be
Too old
replacing
to put it
that.
on,
They're
yeah.
too old to put it on. Second of all, they weren't engineered to support that weight, so we would have to reinforce the roofs. And then lastly, Eversource hasn't got the line down that road that could take the energy upload. So the best we can do at this point is buy in net solar credits, not create them.
I don't think Eversource is in a hurry to do that either.
Right now, there seem to be terribly, the one that's being built on Catino's property is about the last one I've seen them accept, and it was a fight. So, also before you, by the way, is a first draft of the town meeting warrant. And the articles have not been approved by the Board of Selectmen, so some articles may not survive that scrutiny. But it gives you an idea of what to look for. And by the way, if you find mistakes, please let me know, because this is only a first draft. And we're gonna go right to publication in the second week of April, so I don't really have a lot of time, so.
Some of the details will be added next week.
There'll be more.
Before we vote on the budget.
Yeah, you vote on the
We'll go
budget,
line
there's a
item
big
by line
detail.
item.
There's a big detail, and then we're gonna have to probably, I'd like to really sort of firm up the capital budget next week if I can. Board's gonna, the Board of Selectmen doesn't meet on this issue until the 2nd of April, so, we wanna, I'm not sure that we can necessarily vote on everything until we know it's gonna make it into the warrant, but sort of knowing your position on things would be very helpful going into the Board of Selectmen's meeting on April 2nd.
Can you put that on the agenda, Captain? Okay. And the wage and classification, we'll have that information next week as well?
Yeah, we can, I can release to you the ratings that have been assigned to each job classification. We'll do that. The board has approved it, and Julie's putting into the budget, so there's an annualized number, and then there's gonna be the number that will change in the budget, because, as you know, some budgets were just put in by the department and at a specific number. Julie's telling me that some of those numbers were higher than wage and classification came back. So we will probably have to use the liaison from the finance committee back to those departments where there are changes, where there's less.
Is there any way that stuff you can email it?
Yes, happy to. Do you want me to give it to Kathy, who'll give it to you, or?
Either way, me or through Kathy, I like email, it's easier.
Okay. Happy to do that for you.
No, I got so many emails on different budgets of different organizations I'm
Yeah,
connected with.
I think that it's only fair to give you the ratings and then the rates of scale, and then even tell you where the changes are, on how much the change in each budget is. But of course, we'll be giving that to you next week in the department budget, but where a department may have put in a higher number and wage and classification is giving a lower number, that's something you need to know.
Yeah.
Now, are you adjusting the budget based on the wage and classification?
And if you guys object, you're gonna need to tell me. So,
Is there a range that you go by and look in the wage and classification?
yes, let's say
So do
a
you
job
go-
is rated at a grade 11. It has a range of 10 steps. And they range, I think they go up like 2.5% a step. So, well, I'm not quite sure. I'll give you the whole breakdown on that.
So if there's a range and increase of, let's say, $5,000 to $10,000 in a particular job, do you split the difference, or do you go at the lower end, or do you?
What the selectmen did in placing, for the first time around, putting people into steps, was they calculate, what are you making now? What would the 2% COLA bring you to? What did the wage and classification, did you get graded in a range that was the same as, let's say, pick a number, I'm making $60,000, so they looked at the grade 11, went over to $60,000 and said, okay, that's step 5. Okay, and then they adjusted it to the closest step. And the favor was to go one above. So in other words, if there was any doubt that, for example, if I'm making 60 and the range was 59,826, and the next one up was 6120, they went to the 61. So there would be an increase. There wouldn't be, and no one would be going backwards. In the event where someone was in, let's say, grade 11, step 10, and they're at the top of the scale, there's no room, and the 2% would have put them slightly above that, they gave them the 2%. So nobody gets rolled backwards, if you will. But it'll let inflation sort of take care of it ultimately.
Now, the $20,000 figure was mentioned earlier. Does that include the 2% increase or just above that?
No, that's the total. 2% plus wage and classification.
Plus wage, so it could be a higher figure?
Correct. No, that's the number.
Okay.
Okay? In other words, and I didn't bring it with me, but I'll be delighted to show it to you after the meeting. The 2% is the minimum. And all that money that we're giving you there includes the 2% and putting you into the step.
And that total 20,000?
22 and change. No one getting rich.
I guess
So
so.
I need to dispel any rumor to that effect. Wage and classification did not dole out unwarranted increases.
Just seems to say we weren't that far off.
Some cases, we were a little further off than we would like to have been, but now we have a system.
Yeah.
And while the system isn't perfect, it's a system. And now what will happen is the Board of Selectmen will form a wage and classification committee, which usually consists of 3 people. A representative of town administration, either myself or Julie, a representative from the finance committee, and a representative from the Board of Selectmen. Again, membership is determined by the Board of Selectmen. And then they would take any issue that comes up. I didn't get rated properly, my step is wrong, and that committee will convene and make a determination and a recommendation back. So the grading, where you are in the grades are pretty accurate based against it. Are there some things I wonder about? Yes. But when we get this up and running, then wage classification can look at it and say they can confirm it or change it.
I think it was a history to that. Answering your question, I think that over the years, each year administrators have got a 2% increase, and that's gradual and compounded. So as I said, it reached the level that it didn't take much alteration with that study. Is that correct?
There was actually some surprises in the study.
There may be some, but it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't show us to be terribly out of whack.
Right, exactly.
But
One time we were very much
Yeah.
so.
But the problem you really run into is when you get unions that are doing a COLA plus a step. And what was happening over time was the management was only getting the COLA. So slowly but surely, the union membership, if you will, was coming up and touching the management. And in one particular case, the manager of the department should have resigned and taken the job as senior clerk. She would have made more.
Right.
So that's an issue that you need to resolve before it hits that point. And wage and classification took into that calculation. And in this particular case, that's one of the ones that's getting more of a bump.
One of my concerns long-term with this whole thing is, the revenues that we generate are not going to keep pace with the increases in expenses and salaries in specific long-term. I mean, what's going to happen at some point when we just can't sustain it? I mean, are we going to have to adhere to this, or can the town say, look, this is all we can afford right now,
The same would be
despite
true.
despite what the wage and classification says?
Well, the same would be true with a union contract. Think of this as, a union contract. Okay, so when you adopt wage and classifications, you're agreeing to a collective bargaining agreement, much the same way you would do with the clerical union. So hopefully, as we go forward, those changes are not in excess of what's being promised to unions. The direct answer to the question is, what's the flaw with Proposition 2.5?
That was a question last week.
Flour is 2.5. The inflation rate isn't always 2.5.
Well,
So,
I mean, if you ask residents for more in tax dollars, I mean, you're gonna displace some elderly people who are on fixed incomes, and they're not
oh
gonna
no, I
stay
think
in
we're
their
gonna do
homes.
more than that. Tar and feathering comes to mind. So
Yeah,
I
those of
think
us in
that-
this room.
Yeah, so I think the direct answer to the question there is that caution and prudence and, hey, we're already doing it. We've reduced the head count. How can we be more efficient in what we do? How can I automate what we do? How can I'm not interested in telling employees they're gonna be replaced by a machine, because they're not, but maybe as we develop, I showed Bob the proposal for a piece of software that automated all of our permitting and put it online. So, downside is you buy it once, the good side is it never goes home. So, and I guess the other example I would give you, Michael, is look at McDonald's. I don't frequent McDonald's that much, but when I do, I'm shocked at how few people work there now. And I go in and you have to order on a screen,
Kiosk.
and you have to pay in advance, and then you might see somebody put it in a bag for you.
And we see it in grocery stores too.
Right.
I mean, it's
Self-checkout and, so it's probably more noticeable and more dramatic in that side of the world, but you're gonna have to see some efficiencies come in here.
See him talking garages, same thing.
Right. I think you're gonna see some
What he said.
efficiencies here. I think that the answer is that there's pro and a con. We'll be able to go online with the software, and we'll be able to accept permit applications on Christmas Eve at 10:30 at night. That's a way of making us a little more efficient. I can't perceive the future. I'm amazed at how many people still come in and pay their taxes in cash. Blows my mind. I haven't been to town hall to pay my taxes in a million years, and yet on tax due date, the line is out the door. So I gotta go with the pace of my
I
community.
was old school, just writing checks for everything and still putting them in the mail.
Yeah, you are. And I was the last, but I love, writing the checks out on Sunday night and mailing them off, but I don't even do that anymore. So, but I'm still amazed. We have a tremendous amount of clientele, still comes in, hands the check over in the collector's office every day. It's interesting to see, but there was an article today about the city of Boston automating the birth certificate request.
Yes.
You don't go into town, to City Hall anymore and request your birth certificate, you do it online. And I think that's great, because you can do it any time of the night or day, and it cuts down the traffic line in the clerk's office, but how do you take care of somebody who doesn't have a computer, or isn't
Library.
computer savvy, or library, I suppose?
You gotta,
Yeah.
you gotta stay up
Especially
with
elderly.
technology, unfortunately.
And we're going to experience a little bit of culture shock here, because we're going to online with Harper's on the payroll, and everybody gets they can look up their W-2, and they can look up their pay stub, and they can look up the hours they work, but it's online, and it's only online. So we're going to have that to deal with.
Do we pay weekly?
Bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly?
Yep.
Federal government's been like that for a while.
Thank goodness. It's hard to move people from weekly to bi-weekly. You'd think it would be easy. It's not.
Well, I mean, with W-2s online and everything, I mean, they don't mail stuff out.
Well, I mean, look at it from this perspective, talk about efficiency, which is Michael's point of view. I did my mortgage over, and so of course I had to come up with, W-2s. And I went to my tax file, and one of my W-2s wasn't where I thought it was. So I had to go back and request the W-2. But that means somebody had to stop what they were doing, go look through the file, find it, copy it, give it to me. So I interrupted her day for 10, 15 minutes to just do that. If you had 2 or 3 requests of that a day, if we go online, look it up yourself.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna be looking at other ways of people being able to pay their taxes online. We have it now, but I don't think it's the most efficient. So, one of the charges I've given our new treasurer collector is look at other systems that make it more convenient and more friendly to pay your bills online. John wants us to move on.
And to move on?
I'm paying a lot of my bills online because of the security issues. But
Does anyone else have any questions regarding the information that we discussed this evening?
Do we have to vote on any of this?
Yeah.
Not till next week.
I think once I put a balanced budget before you, but this is the key, you know, we have a week now and we'll get you the budget as it now stands, hopefully before next week so you can look through it. But next week when you come in, I'm looking for a vote. And if you get any ideas on how to close that last 76,000, I'm all ears.
Give it
John
all
said
the
he'd be here
department
tomorrow
heads.
morning in your office to give you all the answers you're
I
looking
bought a
for.
lottery ticket this morning.
Yeah, we'll move on to old business. I don't have anyone else. New business. Next meeting will be next Wednesday, March 27th, 7 o'clock. We'll have the school department, as well as the financial team. And we'll add to the agenda the request for transfer from the fire department cap. If anything else comes up, Brian, for next week.
Yep.
We'll call it
Kathy.
Kathy.
Yep.
On the agenda. That being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.